It was about 8:37 p.m. in Abuja, and the city was still buzzing with life. And what happened next will shock you. A young woman named Alice sat in the back of the taxi as the car sped through the busy streets. The dry, cold wind blew through the window, but it didn't seem to bother her much. She was on her way to Maitama, and the night felt calm, almost too calm. The taxi driver kept his eyes on the road, but Alice couldn't help but notice something unusual in the distance. As the car passed, she saw an old woman, about 75 years old, walking alone on the street. She was holding a cane and struggling against the cold wind. Something in the young woman's heart told her that she couldn't just leave the old woman out there. She turned to the driver and said, "Stop, please. Let's help her." The taxi pulled over, and Alice stepped out. She walked towards the old woman and gently said, "Mama, please let us drop you off where you are going." The old woman hesitated, glancing around, but she seemed too tired to argue. "No, my daughter, I will manage," the old woman replied weakly, shaking her head. But the young woman insisted, "It is no trouble at all, oh. Please just let us help you." After a few moments, the old woman agreed. Slowly, she climbed into the back seat. The taxi was quiet as it made its way through the streets. Alice glanced at the old woman occasionally, noticing how frail she seemed. The old woman sat still, gazing out the window as the taxi made its way to a quiet neighborhood. After a short ride, the taxi pulled up in front of a small estate, a peaceful area that seemed a bit secluded from the rest of the city. The old woman slowly got out of the car, turning to thank Alice. "Thank you, my daughter," the old woman said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. "May God bless you." Alice smiled, waving goodbye as the taxi driver drove off, but something felt strange as they left. Alice realized that the old woman had left her cane behind the back seat. The next morning, Alice woke up early and set out to return the cane to the old woman's home. The air was cool and the sun was rising over the horizon, casting a soft glow over the streets of Abuja. After a short drive, she arrived at the estate. It was quiet and the streets seemed peaceful. She walked up to the house and knocked on the door, hoping that the old woman would answer. A few moments later, an older woman opened the door. She looked much older than the woman the young woman had helped. The young woman explained that she was looking for the old woman. She had given a ride to the previous night, and that she had accidentally left her cane in the taxi. The older woman listened carefully to Alice's story. She then asked her to wait a moment and went inside. When she came back, she was holding a photo in her hand. "This is the woman you are looking for," she said, showing the photo to the young woman. But as Alice looked at the photo, her heart sank. It was the same woman, but the older woman said something that took her breath away. "That's my sister," the older woman said. "But she passed away 12 years ago." Alice was in complete shock. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She argued that she had just helped the woman yesterday. How could she be dead for 12 years? The older woman, calm as ever, invited Alice to visit the cemetery. "Come, I will show you where she was buried," she said. Alice, still in disbelief, agreed. They walked through the estate and headed towards the cemetery. The air was heavy, and Alice's heart was pounding in her chest. As they walked past rows of tombstones, the older woman stopped at one grave and pointed to it. "This is where she rests." she said softly. Alice looked at the grave, and something unusual caught her eyes. Right next to the headstone was a small package wrapped in cloth. She felt a chill as she bent down to pick it up. It was placed there carefully, almost like it was meant for her. As she held the package, the older woman watched quietly, her face unreadable. The young woman carefully unwrapped it, revealing a letter inside. The letter read, "My daughter, I know you are a good girl because I knew you would come back and return my walking stick. That is why I left you this treasure to express my gratitude. Take this package and open it, and may you find what you seek from it." Alice carefully opened the package further, revealing a delicate gold pendant shaped like a crescent moon. The pendant gleamed in the sunlight, its intricate carvings of strange symbols, making her wonder if it had some hidden significance. But what really struck Alice was the weight of the pendant. It felt heavy in her hands, as though it carried something far more significant than just its material value. It was a gift, yes, but it felt almost like a clue, or even a key to something bigger. The older woman watched Alice closely, her expression unreadable. Alice couldn't shake the feeling that she was being drawn into something much deeper than a simple act of kindness. "Why did she leave me this?" Alice asked softly, almost to herself. The older woman didn't answer right away. Instead, she said, "Sometimes gifts are given without explanation. The meaning will unfold in time." Alice didn't understand, but she knew she had to learn more. Whatever this pendant was, it was connected to the mystery of the old woman and possibly to her own life in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. As Alice stood by the grave, the weight of the pendant still in her hand, the air around her seemed to shift. There was a strange stillness, as though the world had quieted, waiting for something to happen. Alice shivered slightly. Something about the entire situation felt off. She had helped the woman last night, had seen her with her own eyes, but now here she was, standing at a grave that was supposedly hers. The letter she had found, the pendant, the strange silence, it all felt like a riddle she had to solve. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the cemetery, and Alice heard a faint whisper. She turned quickly, but saw nothing. The older woman, who had been silent for a while, finally spoke up. "There are things in this world that cannot be explained," she said softly. "Things that happen for a reason, though we may never know why." Alice wasn't sure what to think, but she had a deep sense that she was being pulled into something much greater than a simple coincidence. Alice spent the next few hours thinking about everything: the strange events, the dead woman, the letter, and the pendants. She had to know more. She had to understand the message that had been left for her. Later that evening, she returned to her apartment and sat down at her small kitchen table. The pendant lay in front of her, and she unrolled the letter again. Her fingers brushed over the words as if they held some hidden code. "I knew you were a good person. I knew you would return my walking stick. That is why I left you these gifts. Open it and may it bring you what you seek. Goodbye." Alice felt a chill run through her body. What did it mean? Why had she been chosen? Why had the old woman trusted her with such a gift? And what was it that she was supposed to seek? Just as Alice was about to put the letter down, her phone buzzed. It was a message from a number she did not recognize. "Follow the path and you will see what awaits." Alice's breath caught in her throat. Was this a coincidence, or was the mystery deepening even further? The next morning, Alice decided she couldn't ignore the message. The words "follow the path" kept echoing in her mind. What part? What was she supposed to do? As she prepared to leave her apartment, Alice grabbed the pendant and stuffed it into her bag, not sure if she was going to need it, but feeling like it might somehow be important. She stepped out into the bustling streets of Abuja, her thoughts swelling. The first step she decided was to return to the estate where the old woman had lived. She had to learn more about the woman's life. Was there something hidden there that could explain the strange occurrence? Alice arrived at the estate and walked towards the house. This time, there was a different feeling in the air, a sense of anticipation that she couldn't shake. The older woman greeted her with a nod, as if she had been expecting her. "You came back," the old woman said quietly. "You have questions, don't you?" Alice nodded, her heart racing. "Yes, I need to know more. What is the meaning of all this?" The older woman smiled softly, but it wasn't a comforting smile. "All will be revealed in time. But first, you must visit the place where she lived. The answer lies there." Alice followed the older woman through the house. It was a modest home with wooden floors and simple furniture. As they passed through the hallway, Alice noticed a door at the end of the corridor that was slightly ajar. The older woman stopped in front of it, her face growing more serious. "This room," she said, "has been kept locked for a long time. You are the first to step inside in many years." Alice felt a shiver run down her spine. What could be inside this room? Why had it been locked? The older woman handed Alice a key. "The path you are on will lead you here, but you must be ready to face what you find." Alice took the key with trembling hands and slowly opened the door. As she stepped inside, a chill seemed to sweep over her. It felt as though she was trespassing in a sacred place, but she knew she had to go on. Alice moved to the shelves, running her fingers over the spines of books that hadn't been touched in years. Her hand paused on one book which felt heavier than the rest. She pulled it from the shelf and opened it. The room was quiet except for the soft sound of Alice's breathing. She held the books in her hands, the pages feeling old and fragile beneath her fingers. The symbols inside looked like something from an ancient time, but there was also something strangely familiar about them. Alice turned the pages carefully, trying to make sense of the markings. As she flipped through the book, one page caught her eyes. It had a drawing that looks like a shrine with people dressed in traditional Nigerian clothes standing around it. She looked closely at the drawing, noticing a woman at the center. The woman looked strangely like the old woman she had helped the night before. Alice's heart raced. Was this a clue? Who was this woman? Why was she in this book? Just as Alice was about to turn another page, the older woman's voice broke the silence. "You found it, didn't you?" she asked, appearing behind her. Alice turned around quickly, clutching the book. "What is this? Why does it have a picture of the woman who I helped?" The older woman's face was serious now. "That woman you helped, her name was Hawa. She was part of something very old, something hidden, and now you have been brought into it." The older woman led Alice to a chair, motioning for her to sit. Something that no one outside the family was meant to know about. Alice listened carefully, her curiosity growing. "What do you mean? What was she protecting?" She was a part of a community that believed in the power of the land. They didn't just believe in the spirits, but in the strength of the earth, the trees and the rivers. They were called the Gwari people. They believed their ancestors lived through the land, and that was what they protected. Alice had heard of the Gwari people, but she didn't know much about them. Her parents often talked about Abuja's history and the people who lived here long before it became the capital. The pendant you found is connected to them. the older woman continued. It's not just a piece of jewelry, it's a symbol of their strength and power. It is meant for someone who understands the land, who respects it. That is why you helped Hawa. You are meant to carry on the legacy. Alice felt a lump form in her throat. Could it be true? Could she really be connected to something this important? The older woman leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. Now that you have the pendants, there are steps you must take to understand its true power. But be careful, not everyone who seeks the truth is ready for what they will find. Alice's stomach tightened. She had always wanted to know more about the history of her country, but now she felt like she was being thrown into something much bigger than she could have ever imagined. What should I do next? Alice asked. The older woman handed her a small folded map. It looked like it had been drawn by hand with markings that Alice didn't understand. Take this map. It will guide you to where you need to go. But remember, the journey won't be easy. You must prove your heart and your intentions. You are the one Hawa chose. Now it is time for you to finish what she started. Alice took the map carefully. Feeling its weight, the ink on the map seemed old and the lines looked faded. It was clear that this map had been passed down for generations. Be brave, Alice, the older woman said softly. You have what it takes. But remember, you are not just working for yourself. You are working for everyone who believes in the land, in the power of our ancestors. The next day, Alice packed a small bag with water, snacks, and a map. She wasn't sure where the journey would take her, but she knew she couldn't turn back now. She started walking down the streets, the city of Abuja bustling around her. The traffic, the sounds of the people talking, the street vendors, everything seemed normal. But Alice felt like she was walking through a hidden world, one that most people couldn't see. She took a bus towards the outskirts of the city. The ride was long, and her thoughts kept racing. What would she find at the end of the map? What was she supposed to do when she got there? Finally, after a few hours, Alice arrived at the location marked on the map. It was a quiet place outside the city, near a large river. There were no tall buildings here, just trees and open land. Alice looked around, unsure of what to do next. The air was fresh, and there was a sense of peace in the area, but something didn't feel quite right. She followed the path that was shown on the map, walking deeper into the land. Soon, she came across a small wooden hut. The door was slightly open, as if someone had been waiting for her. Alice hesitated for a moment, but then she pushed the door open and stepped inside the hut. Inside, there was an elderly man sitting by a small fire. His clothes were simple, but his eyes were wise, and there was a calm energy about him. "Welcome, Alice," he said, his voice deep but warm. "I knew you would come." Alice was shocked. "How did you know my name? How do you know I am the one the old woman chose?" The man smiled. "Hawa knew. She knew you would come when the time was right. She left you a path to follow. Now you must decide whether to take it. It's not just about the pendants. It's about your heart and your connection to the land." Alice felt a mix of fear and excitement. What was she supposed to do now? Was she ready to continue this journey? "Come," the elder said, standing up slowly. "I will show you the next step." Alice followed the elder through the small path leading deeper into the quiet land. The trees stood tall around them, and the air smelled fresh, almost like something ancient was hidden here. They walked in silence, the only sound being the crunch of dry leaves underfoot. Eventually, they reached a clearing with a large stone circle in the center. The stone circle was surrounded by different plants, and in the middle of it, there was an old weathered stone altar. The elder turned to Alice. "This is a sacred place. This is where you will receive the next part of your journey. You must sit in the center of the circle and meditate. Let the land speak to you." Alice was nervous. How could she meditate? She wasn't sure if she even knew how to clear her mind. But there was something about the place. the stillness and the sense of mystery that made her feel like this was the right thing to do. "Do not fear," the elder said gently. "The land knows you. It has been waiting for something like you." Alice nodded, took a deep breath, and sat down in the center of the circle. As Alice closed her eyes and focused, she felt a strange warmth coming from the earth beneath her. It was as if the ground itself was alive, connecting with her. At first, her thought raced, but slowly, the sound of the forest faded away, and a soft voice entered her mind. "Alice," the voice whispered, "you are not alone. The land has always been with you, and now you must listen closely. The path you walk is one of strength and purpose." Alice opened her eyes, startled. Had she imagined it? She looked around, but the clearing was as quiet as before. The only sign of life was the wind blowing gently through the trees. "The path is not easy," the voice continued. "You must prove your heart, your intentions, and your respect for the land and its people. Only then can you unlock the truths behind the pendants you carry. Only then can you see the path that we are taking you on. Only then can you become the person that we want you to become in the city of Abuja." Alice felt her heart race. What did it mean to prove her heart? And how was she supposed to do it? She didn't know what was coming, but she had to keep going. The voice faded, and Alice was left in the silence of the clearing. She slowly stood up, feeling slightly dizzy from the experience. The elder was waiting nearby, watching her with a knowing expression. "Did you hear the land?" he asked. Alice nodded, still shaking. "Yes, but what does it mean? What am I supposed to do next?" The elder stepped closer. "The land will test you, Alice. Your heart must be pure. Your actions will show who you truly are." He handed her a small stone. It was plain and unpolished, but it felt heavy in her hand. "This stone represents your connection to the land. You will carry it with you. If you can protect it, keep it safe, and use it for good, you will be ready to learn the truth." Alice looked down at the stone in her hand. It felt ordinary, but somehow it seemed important. "What am I supposed to do with it?" "The test will come soon," the elder said. "The stone will guide you, but you must protect it at all costs." As Alice stood in the clearing, the air seemed to shift. The wind picked up, and the once calm forest began to feel different. There was a sense of danger, something in the air that made her heart race. The elder noticed the change as well. "Alice, protect the stone," he said urgently. "There are others who want what you carry. They do not understand its true power, but they will try to take it from you." Before Alice could respond, a rustling sound came from the bushes. Two men emerged from the shadows. They were tall and wore dark clothes, their faces hidden under hoods. One of them stepped forward and spoke in a low, threatening voice. "Give us the stone, girl. You don't know what you are dealing with." Alice backed away slowly, clutching the stone tightly in her hand. "No," she said firmly. "I won't let you take it." The elder moved quickly, stepping between Alice and the strangers. "You do not understand. Leave now or you will regret it." The two men paused, their eyes narrowing. They looked at each other, then back at the elder. With a flick of their hands, they disappeared into the trees as quickly as they had come. Alice stood frozen, her heart pounding. Who were they? And why did they want the stone? The elder turned to her with a stern expression. "The test has begun." The elder led Alice back to the small hut. His pace quick and purposeful. Alice's thoughts raced. Who were those people? And why did they want the stone so badly? She could still feel the tension in the air, like something was watching her, waiting for her next move. Once inside the hut, the elder closed the door behind them and sat down. Alice followed, still gripping the stone tightly. "You are safe now," the elder said, "but this is only the beginning. Those people will not be the last who come after you. There are forces out there who want to control the power of the land. But you are the key, Alice. You must protect what you have been given." Alice nodded, feeling the weight of her responsibility. She had no idea what she was getting into, but one thing was clear. She couldn't stop now. Alice could feel the stone's weight in her hand, like it was growing heavier with every minute that passed. The elder's warning echoed in her mind. There are others who want what you carry. That night she didn't sleep well. Every creak of the hut, every rustling of leaves outside made her jump. She kept thinking about the two strangers who had appeared in the forest. Why did they want the stone so badly? At dawn, Alice decided to leave the hut and find out more about what was happening. The elder had given her a map, but she had a feeling that she needed to explore the city first. Maybe there were more clues to find. She said goodbye to the elder and left the hut, her feet carrying her back towards the city of Abuja. But Alice felt like she was in another world. Something big was happening and she had no idea how to stop it. As Alice walked through the market, a woman caught her attention. The woman was old with grey hair, tied in a bun, and a walking stick in her hand. She was standing by a fruit stall, her eyes focused on Alice. "Child," the old woman said, stopping Alice as she passed. "The path you are walking is full of danger. You must turn back. The land has chosen you, but the path is not kind to those who do not know or understand its ways." Alice was startled. "Who are you? How do you know what I am carrying?" The woman smiled mysteriously. "I know the land. I know what it can do. If you are not careful, the land will take from you what it gave. Beware of those who seek what you have." Before Alice could ask more, the woman turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Alice standing there, confused. Who was that? Alice whispered to herself. It seemed like everyone knew about her journey, even strangers. Was it all connected?